As far as I can tell, most people don't hold Revelations in very high regard when it comes to the Ezio trilogy, but I actually do. This whole project actually started out as a video about how underappreciated I thought Revelations was before it spiraled out of control as most things do. Anyway, for anyone who hasn't been following, this is part 4 of my journey through the entire Assassin's Creed franchise in the lead up to Assassin's Creed Mirage in the hopes of finding out what made the series so special, where it went wrong, and how they can fix it. I'm not much for intros, so you should expect spoilers ahead as I'll be summarizing the entire plot. If everyone's ready, let's get into what I think is a forgotten gem in Assassin's Creed Revelations. Okay, I'm gonna make you guys a deal. I'm gonna allow myself to talk about something that I personally find extremely exciting, and then after that, I promise I'll shut up and go back to all the other stuff that matters to normal people. So, social stealth was added in the second entry and really came to define the franchise in my eyes. But one thing that drove me insane is the fact that you could never seem to do it well, and Ezio was always seemingly stepping on shoes, but here in Revelations, they finally made it better. Simply get into a group, activate the blend, let go of the thumbstick, and he will navigate for you, both maintaining seamless stealth and allowing you to focus on what's around you for the first time. On top of that, this works with allies as well, allowing you to keep pace perfectly with your NPCs that are dedicated to walking any speed other than the one you're walking, and I love this. I'm sorry, I know it's this small, stupid thing, but believe it or not, this right here is why you're watching this video in the first place. It was such a breath of fresh air that I just needed to breathe it in and shout from the rooftops. Okay, I'm done now. I guess we can talk about those other gameplay changes like bomb making and the hook blade. So yeah, let's start with bomb making because while it was definitely a rather large addition to the game, it was never something they brought back, and that's for good reason to be honest. On paper, it's a great system. New tools that can essentially be whatever you want them to be, opening up flexibility in all aspects of gameplay. Stealth, kills, open combat, and escape. We have cherry bombs meant to lure enemies away, letting you slip by unnoticed. Smoke bombs make a return that allow you to break the line of sight, both escaping and avoiding combat. You can make your bombs deadly to kill your targets, or maybe even fill them with caltrops to allow you time for escape. Those aren't even your only options either, with more options to fill the bombs with different housings like impact, fused, and tripwires. Even your deployment methods can vary. So why isn't this game changing? Why was it never brought back? Simply because they're wholly unnecessary outside of missions designed around their use. There's almost nothing they can do that the tools you spent the other two games mastering can't, and that means you're likely to just use whatever you're used to. On top of that, they're just kind of slow, and that's never going to incentivize use. In summary, cool idea, dull execution. Now, on the other hand, the hook blade is something that I very much wish had returned in future titles because, frankly, it's great. To start with, it's partially used for narrative consistency. Ezio is older in this game, easily past his prime, but there's no way they're going to slow him down, so what do? You give him a tool that allows him to move faster than ever before that is able to justify his mobility even at his age. The hook blade is awesome because it allows for faster transit on all three axes when applied in the proper manner. If you're climbing vertically, you'll be able to reach up for higher ledges you never would have reached even with the climb leap you learned in Venice, and if you get the spacing right, that can lead to very rapid climbs. Across the rooftops, it can help you in two great ways. For one, instead of using hanging pots to turn corners, they can be used to propel you forward over a great distance. It adds both a layer of choice and a layer of skill to a once thoughtless mechanic. It's not difficult to time the button to propel you off of them, but man, it feels great every time. On top of that, an extra few inches on your arm means you can make jumps that would have been just out of reach before, challenging you to be more daring with how you cross gaps. Oh, but that's not all it can do, is it? What's the largest irritation when trying to escape across Italy? It's those damn guards who form an impenetrable wall to stop you, but no longer. With a hook blade, all you've got to do is hit them with a little hook and run action to slip by without breaking your momentum, and it's fantastic. Again, I'll miss this when it's gone. I also left out one more new tool we've gotten in the form of the parachute. This would have been a better idea back when we were on a flying machine of death, but we've got it now and that's sick. It isn't needed often, but it is often useful, which is the best kind of tool, really making moving across the city rather enjoyable for me. The combat maintains its aggressive yet smooth feel developed in Brotherhood while adding a few new challenges through the addition of Janissaries. They'll serve as the higher level enemies from the game, and while nowhere near invincible, do pose problems similar to the Templars in AC1, with their ability to counter or block your attacks often being what grinds an execution train to a halt. Add on a pistol they'll employ liberally in combat and the ability to match your running pace, although not your climbing pace, and they become as close to an equal as you'll find besides named characters. Stalkers are also interesting. They're essentially assassins who have been sent to kill you and will run up on you completely at random times and attempt to stab you in the back. A simple button press will be enough to get rid of them, but it's a fun little addition to keep you on your feet, which is always something I'm willing to appreciate. Your assassin recruits will also make a return in this game in essentially the same way. Take over districts to open dens, allowing for more recruits who you'll find out in the streets. Although they've done more with the recruits in this game, giving them their own missions we'll talk about later, but also giving some unique recruitment missions like a shop owner being harassed who needs your help, or a gravely injured man who sent you to help his family, ignoring his own pain for the good of those dear to him. All things I appreciate. When it comes to just playing the games, Revelations quickly becomes one of my favorite in this series. The city of Constantinople feels incredibly good to run through for reasons I just can't quite put my fingers on. With the hook blade and parachute aiding you in navigation across the city and combat feeling as good as it ever has, that means everything about the game in between missions just feels great. And on top of that, the actual missions are good too. So let's get into it. The story in Revelations is definitely a little bit different than those before it, but it follows a very logical line of character development. Ezio was always a man with wisdom beyond his years and spent his whole adult life trying to avoid the fight he was dragged into by his family. Now is no different as he travels far to lands he's never seen before in search of lost knowledge, specifically the knowledge in Altair's library in Masyaf. Oh, hold on, I should go back a bit. If you remember from Brotherhood, Desmond was left unconscious in the vault after stabbing Lucy. In an attempt to save his life, they will put him back into the Animus, which loads him into a safe mode as his mind is pretty damn messed up. He'll be greeted on Animus Island by 16, or what's left of him as his body is long dead, but his mind has been preserved here, which makes absolutely no sense, but whatever. None of that's important right now, we'll come back to it in a bit. Back to what matters, the game opens with a letter from Ezio to his sister Claudia discussing his journey and where he's going. Clumsy exposition, but I'll allow it because it's spoken over a cinematic that goes insanely hard. Seriously, I'll link the whole thing down below in the description if you want to watch it for yourself with sound. Anyways, what you need to know is that Ezio gets to Masyaf to find a troop of Templars waiting for him, and even for all his skill, there's only so many he can take on in one go, so he'll get himself captured before escaping, kicking off the gameplay. So you end up following what appears to be a ghost of Altair throughout the area, but I'm kind of unclear on why. It's true that we did this with Desmond previously, but that was explained as a side effect of the Animus where his own memories were overlapping with those of the ancestors he had experienced, which actually makes a level of sense in-game. Obviously, Ezio has never been in the Animus, but he acknowledges the presence of the ghost, so we know he sees it. So I'm unclear on exactly what's going on here. I mean, I'm aware that it's a navigation system to handhold players to the level, but I don't understand it within the confines of the narrative. Maybe it has something to do with their shared uses of Pieces of Eden, I don't know. You'll work your way to the library where you'll find it needing keys to be opened and no way to force it, so you'll go after the Templar captain, leading to a carriage chase that I found to be pretty damn irritating. Also, assassin or not, I'm pretty sure this fall would have killed Ezio. You'll catch up to the leader who will spill the beans on basically everything they're doing and passing off the journal of Niccolo Polo, which apparently will lead you to the Masyaf Keys. This will mark the end of our tutorial chapter and dump you as Desmond back on Animus Island, where 16 will explain that the Animus is trying to keep him out of the memories, but he's doing what he can to keep you in. It's at this point you'll also get to access some missions you can start on the island, but we'll talk about those later. The chapter is again led into by Ezio writing a letter to Claudia, something that will occur each time we shift to a different segment, and personally I enjoy it. As is required by opening cutscene law or whatever, Ezio will meet two of our main characters while getting off the ship and have no idea who they are at the time. Take your first steps into the city, enjoy a greeting from Yusuf, who is an immediate favorite for me.
Hoş geldin kardeşim. Unless the legend is a lie, you are the man I long to meet. Renowned master and mentor. Ezio Auditore de la. Prego.
Take a tour of the city using your brand spanking new walk and talk feature, where you'll be attacked by the Byzantine soldiers who will act as the antagonist troops for most of the game. But you'll get an interesting twist as the other city guards will move in to fight them off. Both sides are willing to kill you, but they hate each other just as much. Yusuf will introduce you to the other assassins at your hideout and will have Ezio re-equip before giving him a hook blade, running him through how it works, and doing some training to practice what you've learned. After your practice, 2 of your bases will be attacked and Ezio will attend to one while Yusuf does the other, giving you an intro into base defense that, unless you're like me, purposely antagonizing your enemies into attacking you, you will never need to do this again. Although it does get surprisingly hard and fun. With our position re-established, we will again start recruiting new assassins along with doing our new Master Assassin missions. I consider talking about it now, but I think the interruption to our main story will be unwelcome, so we can circle back and discuss it later. The main purpose of your time in the city is to find the Masyaf library keys hidden in the area, and this will mean working with Sophia, who you met on the boat. She's running the bookstore that used to be the Polo's former trading post, which is where you'll begin your search for the keys. After finding a secret door and working your way through the area, the first key will be secured along with a map to help us find the others. Essentially, there's books hidden around the city which hide the clues of where to find the keys. You'll spend a decent portion of the game finding these books, having Sophia decode the location, and working through the tombs to find the keys. Ezio also has a quickly growing affection for Sophia that will catch up to him in the end, but in this moment, there's other work to be done. Ezio will link up with the local Romanis and offer them his aid in what will become a pretty fun mission. A group of Templars have stolen a box of gold from them, so you'll go around stealthily poisoning anyone who touches the box to create the illusion of a Romani curse surrounding it before returning it to its rightful place. Each of the 5 Masyaf keys has a memory from Altair inside of it for you to experience. I'll chat about them going forward when you need all this information to understand the end of the game. For now, just know that you'll learn a little bit more each time. The next mission you'll take up is probably one of my personal favorites in the game, if not the trilogy. Yusuf will learn about a plot to strike at the prince inside his palace during a party that night, and Ezio will volunteer to help them stop the attack. The plan is simple: dress as entertainers and move through the crowd, taking out would-be assassins as you spot them. Luckily, there are some Italian minstrels who were hired to serve as some of the entertainment, and Ezio is just as excited as we are about the chance to knock the crap out of them after all the time they spend annoying you across Italia. Play your way through the party while identifying Templar assassins and providing the distractions needed for them to be taken out quietly. Sometimes this feels super slick, but also, how the fuck weren't some of these kills noticed?
And look at Randy Orton slithering.
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
Keep this up until there's one too many to handle silently, and using the power of music, defend Suleiman, who will, to his credit, recognize you immediately from your encounter on the ship. He will invite you to slip back into the palace on another day to talk with him, which you'll take him up on, and he'll have you spy on the leader of his Janissary Corps, who he suspects of treachery. It's also revealed in this conversation why the Janissaries don't think too much of the prince's uncle and Sultan-to-be, Ahmet. They much prefer Suleiman's father, who is unfortunately not in line to rule. After this, we will get just a touch of fan service when we see Sophia down by the docks.
Mia cara, the strings of fate have drawn us together. Two Italiani, lost and alone in the Orient. Do you not feel the magnetismo?
I feel many things, Messere. Nausea above all.
Is this man bothering you, Sophia?
Excuse me, Messere, but the lady and I are... Oh! Oh, il diavolo in persona! Stay back!
Duccio, a pleasure.
Run, buona donna! Run for your life!
This is a pretty stupid moment, I must admit, but in the words of Steak Bentley, I am a fan and I do appreciate being serviced. Our time from here will be split between the search for keys, Altair's memories, and working to stop Tariq's plot with the Templars. Although over the course of that, you will have a cool mission to start a riot, allowing you to slip in and check out what the Templars are planning. Using a Janissary disguise, you'll follow a patrol back to their encampment, and after moving carefully using crowds, tents, and the environment in general to avoid those who would notice you as out of place, you can find a gap and kill Tariq. Unfortunately, you've made a mistake. He acted as a traitor would, but only out of loyalty, intending to learn the Templar plans and betray them. He holds no ill will towards you, however, understanding that it was his secretive nature that led to this outcome, overplaying his part to the point that even those he fought to protect didn't understand he was on their side. To their credit, this mistake will weigh heavily on both Ezio and Suleiman, but they will honor his last wish using the information he gathered to destroy their enemies. Ezio will also find time to get flowers for Sophia during that time, and isn't that just sweet? You'll recover the 4th of 5 keys, but since the last one is in Cappadocia, where the Templar Manuel has fled to, we'll have to go and get it. And while the prince was kind enough to have a ship prepared for us, there is one minor complication. In response to Ezio, murdering their boss in front of them, the Janissaries have raised the harbor chain to prevent our escape, meaning they will have to be dealt with first. It's pretty simple: slip onto the lighthouse, blow the chain, then fight your way across the harbor to get to your ship. Oh, also, get on a Greek fire cannon burning as many ships as it can reach to a crisp to help facilitate the escape. If you see my Red Dead video, you'll know I'm a sucker for some smoke and fire. It doesn't hold a candle to the tobacco field burning, but looks damn good regardless, making you feel pretty damn cool running across it. The section in the Hidden City isn't particularly interesting, but neither is it long. You'll track down a friendly spy before she gets herself captured, and you'll need to get her out. After getting her out, you'll go to rescue what's left of her fellow spies who are being tortured by Shakulu, or as I like to call him, Angry Man. I'm extremely creative with the nicknames, guys. It's a pretty simple kill, but that's fine as we get a different feel to the Embrace. Ezio shows no kindness for a man who would hurt and torture people for fun. Oh yeah, and he's not dead, which is a little surprise. Gotta give it to the guy, he's a fucking tank absorbing damage like that, then getting up to fight even if he isn't all that hard to beat. I forgot to mention part of the reason you're here is to disrupt the Templar plot to attack Istanbul. And so you'll do that to an extent going out to the powder reserve because blowing up a massive amount of gunpowder in an enclosed space has never gone poorly. At least I haven't heard of it going poorly. I love the speech we get from our Manuel here.
Citizens, soldiers, compose yourselves. Do not give in to fear. We are the true shepherds of Constantinople. We are the lords of this land. We are Byzantines. Torayo, stand fast. Do not let anyone break it.
Let's not pretend any of us would do any different seeing fucking Ezio come to kill us, man. Also, can we just talk about this goofy ass mission preview card? I don't know why, but it looks so damn funny to be like, oh no, he's coming to kill me. Ah! So yeah, anyway, you will in fact chase down the dude, and after an interesting argument consisting of Templar versus assassin ideology, that I must admit I'm not sure I'm agreeing with the person they intended me to, we'll have it out. Back even a coward into a corner and they will raise their hands to defend themselves. Unfortunately for him, this battle was always going to go our way. Now, a far more interesting enemy rose his way up in Ahmet, our future Sultan and current Templar. Unlike many of the others we faced, he at least has a compelling argument for the side he's chosen.
Disappoint me, Ahmed. Why the Templars?
Because I am tired of all of these pointless blood feuds that pit father against son, brother against brother. To achieve true peace, mankind must think and move as one body, with one mastermind.
With that, we'll fight our way back to the ship, and on the way back to the city, explore the last of Altair's memories he left behind for us. I promised when it was relevant I'd run you through Altair's memories, so let's do that. The first is a battle in Masyaf 2 years before the events of the first game will take place. You'll find the village under attack by Templars and a crusader who is apparently a former assassin turned traitor, although he would disagree, holding the master hostage. Altair will hatch a plan to free him working with another assassin by the name of Abbas. When you take down our would-be conqueror, we will learn two things. 1. Al-Mualim has a hell of a right hand, and 2. Seemingly all of the most interesting moments are reserved for Altair.
You put too much faith in the hearts of men, Altair. The Templars know the truth. Humans are weak, base, and petty.
No. Our creed is evidence to the contrary.
Perhaps I am not wise enough to understand, but I suspect the opposite. That I am too wise to believe such rubbish.
You offered him a chance to salvage his dignity. Why?
No man should pass from this world without knowing some kindness.
But he shunned your graces.
As was his right.
Altair, I have watched you grow from a boy to a man in so short a time. It fills me with as much sadness as pride. You fit your father's shoes as if they had been tailored to your feet.
I did not know him well as a father. He was an assassin, above all.
You too were born into this order. Do you regret it?
How can I regret the only life I've ever known?
The second memory starts right at the end of the game, seemingly within minutes of having killed Al-Mualim. Altair chooses to burn his body, which Abbas takes serious issue with, stating that it is forbidden by the creed. Altair makes a valid point that the body could be another phantom produced with the apple, and this was the best way to be sure, but yet the cries of Defiler will come. We know how much Altair has grown and learned over the course of his redemption, but it's not hard for Abbas to turn his past actions against him and sway the crowd. Abbas will retrieve the apple in an attempt to turn it against us, but loses control, unable to handle its raw power. Altair is able to retrieve it and save him, and for his actions, Abbas apologizes, seemingly understanding now that this is something beyond his abilities. In our next memory, we will jump ahead by 30 years, which admittedly leaves some small gaps in my understanding of what happened in between, but as far as I can understand, Altair spent about 20 years building up the order, leaving with his wife Maria to confront the Mongols who were waging their war at the time while leaving a boss in charge. They came back 10 years later to find the assassins in disarray and apparently executed Altair's youngest son for an unknown reason. Altair was filled with rage, wanting nothing more than to cut down a boss on sight, but Maria preaches patience, telling him that he cannot solve any of the assassins' problems if he doesn't take an honorable route to restoring order. I really think Altair wanted to follow what she said and attempt a peaceful resolution, but then this asshole had to go and make a joke about killing his son, which I really wouldn't have recommended. Maria ends up dead because of this, and Altair is forced to flee with his one remaining son. Just FYI, getting to this point is when I had a repeated crash and tried several fixes before being baffled to find out that turning on VSync and locking to 60 FPS was in fact the fix all along. Anyways, they'll beat feet and the boss will yell angrily. 26 years after the events of Part 3, Altair, now an old man, returns to Masyaf in order to find it in even worse condition than he left it in. It's explained to him that it's no longer really the home of the assassins, but some loyal to the Creed are willing to help him. His orders to them are simple. Those that aren't true to the Creed and have hurt the innocent must die. They should spare anyone who's remained true to the Order. It's a slow, painful walk up the hill, but it does get increasingly satisfying as more join your cause along the way. You'll find a boss, and using your knowledge of the future gained from the apple, you just shoot him. Ezio tries to find peace with the boss before his death, but while I think a boss tries to accept it, there just wasn't room in his heart for it. The last memory will show Altair speaking to his friend and apparent fellow assassin in Niccolo Polo before they are attacked and he has to get him out of the city. They will part as Altair hands him the keys, completing our backstory on how the keys changed hands from his to ours. When we return to the city, it will be on high alert, but that doesn't really change much. Return to Sophia's bookshops in hopes of protecting her, but unfortunately, we'll find only death. This moment right here.
Brother. Requiescat in pace. Brothers, sisters, the whole city rises against us, while Yusuf's murderer waits and watches from the arsenal, laughing. Fight with me. Show him what it means to cross the assassins.
It has so much going for it. The context in which Yusuf promised to protect Sophia with his life and did just that, clearly fighting valiantly before he died. Removing the knife from his back and ignoring the note attached to it, showing first his respect for his fallen brother, and then the rage of his youth returning. On top of that, the music they play here is just perfect. Then he gives this speech, rousing his troops before leading them into the battle. All this, and honestly for me, it really fell flat. I'm ashamed to say that as much as I liked Yusuf upon meeting him and generally across the story, I named this section Headband Dies in my notes because I honestly couldn't remember his name at this time. There was lots of potential here, but this just isn't a studio that's great on building side characters, unfortunately, and I find it lacking because of that. We'll ride on our enemies in a pretty cool battle, but it does fizzle out a bit when you remember he's holding a hostage and there isn't much Ezio can do in this moment.
I am sorry it had to come to this. Two men who should be friends, quarreling over the keys to a library. We both strive for the same end, Ezio. Only our methods differ. Do you not see that? Peace, stability, a world where men live without fear. People desire the truth, yes, but even when they have it, they refuse to look. How do we fight this kind of ignorance?
Liberty can be messy, Ahmet, but it is priceless.
Of course. And when things fall apart, and the lights of civilization dim, Ezio Auditore can stand above the darkness and say proudly, I stayed true to my creed.
I will harp on it again and again, but seeing the base ideals of the Assassins and Templars being debated will never be less exciting for me. When they're presented in ways like we see here between Ahmet and Ezio, they both have such valid perspective to share, each philosophy with strong points and failings alike. The concept of fighting not over an end goal, but simply the road we take to get there will always be such a fun story to tell, and they do it so well here. Unfortunate that it comes so late in the game. He gives you a time and a place to trade the keys for Sophia's life before you're forced to let him go. It turns out the Prince Suleiman was listening the whole time, and has a very mature take on the subject, noting his uncle's sincerity, but finding the flaws in his logic. He also makes a request of us.
Ezio, spare my uncle if you can.
Not your father.
No.
The exchange is made, but naturally it's a double cross, and you'll have a very tense float down to the ground to save the real Sofia. The pair will be forced onto a carriage to make their escape out of the city, leading Ezio to being towed behind the carriage while on his parachute, which is actually pretty fun, consisting of avoiding buildings and dropping down to take out enemies on horseback, even throwing them at each other with your hook blade. We continue the tradition of Assassin's Creed games' final bosses being over-the-top fights instead of intricate assassinations, as you guys first have a knife fight, then a fist fight on the way down the mountain before pulling your parachute to survive the fall. Then, funny enough, before you get the chance to spare Ahmet, the father of Suleiman, Salim, shows up and, just like you both assumed, yeets that motherfucker off a cliff without a second's hesitation. He then talks some shit to Ezio, but Sofia pulls him away before he can start a fight.
I write these lines with a steady hand and a light heart. We are in Acre now, Sofia and I, with the 5 Masyaf keys in our possession, and all the time in the world. Sofia is a seasoned traveler and a fine companion to have so far from home. Tomorrow we will make our way to Masyaf, and once there, into Altair's library, to fulfill our father's forgotten dream. Forgive the shortness of this letter, dear sister, for it is late, and we are tired. Perhaps, with luck, the next words you hear from me will be in person. Con affetto, Ezio.
I like happy endings, along with quiet reflective moments where we get to consider all that led us to where we are, which is probably why Revelations is one of the games I hold in such high regard. The Assassin's Creed games and Ubisoft titles in general tend to end on a very abrupt note that, while probably intended to drum up intrigue for the next title, often do more to make for a lackluster ending. This is the only game of the 4 we've looked at so far that actually has what feels like a real ending, while still managing to end on a cliffhanger, as we'll explain later. They'll enter the library, and Ezio will find Altair waiting for him with one more memory in his hand for us to see. It's a short one, essentially just a goodbye to his son before showing us where he hid the apple and sitting down for one last rest. Ezio will decide to leave the apple where it is, stating that he has seen enough of its power for a lifetime, but taking this time to speak directly to Desmond.
I heard your name once before, Desmond. A long time ago. And now it lingers in my mind, like an image from an old dream. I do not know where you are, or by what means you can hear me. But I know you are listening.
I would have liked to have known what became of Ezio in his last years, and it still does feel a bit abrupt, but at the end of the day, the time to wind down the story made a huge difference in comparison to stories that came before it. And while I feel most of us probably don't care, this has always been Desmond's story, not Ezio's or Altair's. So to end on him being past the knowledge needed through his ancestors is a good way to go when it's all said and done, as Ezio finishes his journey and passes along the baton. That concludes Ezio's journey, but before we wrap it up, I do want to talk about some of the side missions in the game that I believe are worth your time.
In a few short months, my life changed forever. I know my easiest days are behind me, but I don't want them back. Not now.
I've tended towards a light overview of side content so far because for the most part it's just more climbing or fighting with not much else to talk about. Revelations goes a bit further with it, however, and I'm happy to report that it became some of my favorite moments in the game. Just to start off light, the Merc and Thief guilds will have a mission for you to complete like the Romanis did, although neither are as interesting as playing with magic. The Mercs will have their captain's son kidnapped needing to be rescued, and the Thieves will have you tailing a snitch to find out who's been funding operations against them, which is an interesting idea, although it's nothing out of our normal wheelhouse. On to the interesting stuff as we return to Animus Island with Desmond. Assuming you've collected enough Animus fragments, which I promise you isn't too much of a chore, you can access 5 missions unique to Desmond himself. It's a weird Animus world that honestly isn't super fun to play through, but I guess it was just a way of adding gameplay to what would otherwise just be a storytelling section. Anyways, it will track back Desmond's life starting as a child growing up in a hidden community among the assassins that they refer to as the Farm. The way he speaks about the place, it sounds like a cult indoctrinating children to their ideology, and I have to say it doesn't shine a positive light on modern day assassins, although I'm not sure if any of the games have ever shined a positive light on them. Funny enough, Desmond wishes that he could go back and tell them he was sorry for not believing, and even knowing that they were right, I can't help but see him as a victim. In our next mission, he'll delve a little farther into what everyday life at the camp was like, mostly consisting of physical training, preparing to fight Templars. Also being warned about the evils of Abstergo, a Templar-run company that seemingly had their fingers in every pie. He speaks about how maybe if they hadn't hidden so much from him, explained more, shown him more, he might have been able to believe, he might have understood, but it was so much uncertainty around it that he couldn't. Part 3 will detail his escape taking off away from the ground and into the forest, walking through nature until he was far enough away to risk hitching a ride. One ride to Omaha and another to Chicago, then he was given some advice that would help him decide where to go.
If you've got nothing, you go to New York. That way, if you leave with nothing, people don't ask why. And if you leave with something, you are one lucky son of a bitch.
Part 4 gives more information on his time in New York, working as a bartender at a spot called Bad Weather, where he was apparently well received. Joking about his past life and the end of the world finally allowed a little bit of joy back into his life, which must have been a breath of fresh air. But it wasn't perfect, as he did find himself missing his family while wishing he didn't. He finally had the new life he ran towards, but he was struggling to live it. Part 5 will pick up 9 years later after he got to New York, yet again struggling to accept his current reality, feeling the bitterness towards the world he had on the farm returning. Just when he was considering that it might be time to go back, Abstergo came to get him, kicking off the events of the first game and completing our timeline up until now. I don't love these sections, and on a replay I probably wouldn't do them again, but it was fun to learn Desmond's story, and I'm glad that these were here. The last missions I want to talk to you about are the Master Assassin missions. When you get an assassin to level 10, you will have the opportunity to install them as the master at one of your dens around the city, and when you do this, it will unlock a unique mission for you to participate in, as the recruit will take it as a learning opportunity. The first time you do this is actually part of a story mission, as I mentioned earlier, and it will have you going after Vali, a former assassin who has turned on the Brotherhood and is now hunting them down. Later, he will capture some younger assassins and use it as a distraction to attack our den. After beating back the attackers, Ezio and our apprentice will chase down and kill Vali, who explains why he turned against us.
Once your creed was as vital to me as air and water. But when the Turks marched into Wallachia, and you assassins did nothing to stop it, how could I continue to believe? If a man's philosophy does not let him protect his people, his home, and his family, what good can it do for the world?
Peace be with you.
God, I just love this. Actual, genuine motivation to fight against us, and within a few words he has made us sympathetic towards him, all while giving us a reason to question the creed ourselves. I tip my hat to you, writer. Each district will have a problem unique to them, some more interesting than others. Before we get to some of my favorites, I have something that was too funny not to share. We'll be working towards tracking down a would-be murderer, and while searching for our target, the recruit will kill an innocent man by mistake. Ezio is harsh but forgiving, tasking the initiate with burying the man's body and committing it to the sea. We get there and, well...
Have it, Mentor. May the shame I feel never fade.
Oh, I feel so bad! Man, fuck this dude, though. Bro, you found a way to miss the ocean. It's literally the biggest target in the world. Come on, man. God. Next up, the actress turned serial killer is a fun one, as we'll track her back to yet another kill and miss our chance to end it there, but not before finding she left us a pile of corpses. On our second attempt, we will move in on her and finish the job. She has a relatively interesting death scene, but the audio is mixed so badly here that I don't have any reason to subject you to it. On to the last though, and one of my favorites, as we step in to help when an argument between the Romanis becomes violent. One will move to call another one out for her crimes and denounce her for how those actions have affected her people. You and your apprentice will work in secret on her journey there to keep her alive by taking out would-be assassins quietly, not wanting to get directly involved and make the situation even worse. Direct intervention will become necessary when our baddie poisons the woman speaking out against her, and the guards misinterpret who the actual killer was, but you'll simply disarm the guards as an attempt to avoid further escalation. Picking up the investigation at a market, Ezio will literally use his nose to track her down, which is kind of hilarious, but whatever. In a fitting end for her, you'll be prompted to kill her with poison, which sounds poetic, but it does have a bit of an awkward waiting period as you stare at her waiting for her to die. She makes no apologies for her actions, and while you certainly couldn't call her redeemed by any stretch, she certainly died with her dignity. I love going back to a game and being happy that I did. Of the 4 I've played so far, Revelations is probably the only one that was pretty much exactly as good as I remember it. The biggest accomplishment gameplay can ever have, the way I look at it, is to feel just as good as you remember it feeling 10 years ago, and that's what I got here with the hook blade and combat flow feeling like they had truly mastered the system they had started out with years before. The story is also for the most part very compelling, managing to have 3 interesting characters all at the same time, when before they sometimes struggled for 2. Both Ezio and Altair getting what felt like a true conclusion to their stories rather than them just ending was something I really appreciate. Not to mention that I think this is the first time Desmond really came alive as his own character. In reality, this has always been his story, and it's finally starting to feel like that here. On top of that, we have 16, who I've never even pretended to care about before, but he actually has a pretty tragic backstory in my eyes now, which surprised me. Getting Desmond's backstory was compelling to me, even with easily the worst gameplay in the series being the barrier to it. And when I finished the game, I was actually excited to find out what happens next. I have to admit that as much as I like this game, and think the gameplay is the best it's been up to this point, I still don't quite think it stacks up to the story of the first game. Funny enough, my favorite moments here were for the most part Altair's, so maybe it's Ezio's story that lets me down, not the game. That being said, if I had to guess which of these games I'll return to first after this project is done, it will probably be Revelations. It's been so long since I played Assassin's Creed 3 that it will effectively be a fresh playthrough for me, and being excited to go into it is refreshing. I just hope I'm not let down with it yet again. Well guys, that concludes part 4 along with Ezio's story. I'd like to say thank you to anyone who's still listening all the way at the end of this video. It means a ton to me. We'll be picking up right on time with Assassin's Creed 3, and I hope you'll join me for that one too. As always, this is Purple signing off. Have a wonderful night, and always remember to smile. Thanks, guys.
To say that everything is permitted is to understand that we are the architects of our actions, and that we must live with their consequences, whether glorious or tragic.
Do you regret your decision to live as an assassin for so long?
I do not remember making that decision. This life, it chose me.